Good morning, class. Today's topic is The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. Before starting with the poem, let's know a little bit about the author. Thomas Sterne Eliot, born 26 September 1888, died 4 January 1965, was a poet, essayist, publisher, playwright, literary critic, and editor. Born in St. Louis, Missouri, he moved to England in the year 1914, married and settled there. He also became British subject in the year 1927, subsequently renouncing his British citizenship. Eliot attracted widespread attention for his poems like The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, published in the year 1915, The Wasteland 1922, The Hollow Man 1925, Ash Wednesday 1930, Four Quartets 1943. He was also known for his plays, particularly Murder in the Cathedral 1935, Cocktail Party 1949. He was awarded Nobel Prize in Literature in 1948 for his outstanding pioneer contribution to present-day poetry. Uh, there are some myths and allusions, references which has been taken in the poem. So we have to know a little bit about them before starting with the poem. The poem is considered as the masterpiece of the poet and the finest example of modern poetry. The poem is difficult and elusive, as I have told you that there are so many references that has been taken in the poem. Some major points are: the poem is dedicated to Ezra Pound. He was also called as Il Miglior Fabbro, meaning heartless editor. The title consists of 3 words, not 2 words as many of the scholars and students they take. It is The Wasteland. The poem, because it has been greatly edited, it was then divided into 5 subsequent sections. The first is Burial of the Dead, second Game of Chess, third Fire Sermon, fourth Death by Water, and fifth What the Thunder Said. Originally, as I told you, that poem was long. So originally it was of 800 lines and was greatly edited by Ezra Pound, and it is now some 440 lines. The poem is polyglot, that it took word from 26 languages. 8 major religions have been touched in the poem. The poem originally ended in horror, horror, horror. Horror, horror, horror were the last words of the antagonist Kurtz from the novel Heart of Darkness, which was then replaced by Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. There are 8 Sanskrit words in the poem. Also, there are 8 female characters in the poem. There are 4 wastelands discussed in the poem. The first is the biblical wasteland Amos. The second is the Fisher King's land. Fisher King's story occurs in the first and the second part of the Bible. The third is the land of King Oedipus. King Oedipus' story is part of Greek literature. So in a way we are connected to Bible, Greek literature and Roman literature, then coming back to English literature, and to connect it there is also another wasteland, the Indian wasteland. The fifth being Minds of the Modern Man. 4 myths have been used in the poem. The first is Egyptian fertility myth. Second is the Tyresis myth. Tyresis is also the coordinator or the linker between all the 5 sections, and also from the ancient past to the relevant past and then to the contemporary world. Then there is Prajapati myth. It occurs in the 5th section of the poem, and the Indian myth. The Indian myth has been taken in the 3rd part and in the 5th part. Eliot took reference from 2 major books, J.C. Weston's From Rituals to Romance, published in the year 1920, and Sir James Fraser's The Golden Bough, published in the year 1922. The 2 books are also responsible for supplying the two major myths that has been used. The first is the Egyptian fertility myth. In ancient time, in Egypt, people used to bury their corn crops in the Nile water, in the shores of the Nile water, in the bank of the Nile water, and as the time of rains, the water used to arise. The buried corn crops used to grow up. They used to call the resurrection of the god Orosis. Orosis was the god of crop. The same fertility myth has been used in the first part, that is burial of the dead, that has been taken from the Egyptian fertility myth. Another myth is the myth of the Holy Grail. Jesus Christ was crucifixed, and when he was crucifixed, his followers then collected his blood in saucer and cups. These cup and saucer and even lances, which were used to drop the blood from the body of Jesus Christ, was then became then they became the symbol of worship, and people worship these symbols for the reason that in place of Jesus Christ, at least there was blood of Christ, and they used to worship these cups. With the passage of the time, these cups, they acquired some kind of power, some kind of magic powers with them, some kind of blessings with them, and with passage of the time, these cups were also lost. One such cup and saucer were worshipped in the land of Fisher King, and they were also worshipped in Amos. It was said that uh, in a wake of some victory, or in the some kind of sin, that his soldiers, they uh, raped and murdered the nuns of the cathedral in the land of the Fisher King, because of which God got so angry that he cursed Fisher King and his land. The infertility was then cursed upon Fisher King, and subsequently his land became infertile. Fisher King asked for the pardon from God, but God said that only the fertility of the land of his and of the king will return only when a pious follower of Jesus Christ and a holy knight would cross from the land of Fisher King towards the land of Amos, where the cathedral was, and then restore the Holy Grail. So that this ritual has been taken in the poem. This works as the background for the whole poem. There is a holy knight and is a pious follower of Jesus Christ who are crossing the wasteland of Fisher King towards Amos to restore the Holy Grail in the cathedral. So this works as the background for the poem. Then there is also myth of Tiresias. Tiresias was a blind soothsayer. It was said of him that he was son of half goddess, and because of which he had some magical power. Also at the same time, it was said of him that he once disturbed copulating snakes. The snakes cursed him and blinded him. There is another story that and also he was cursed to become a female from a male, and then he again disturbed another couple of copulating snake, and he was again converted into a male, but he remained blind. Another story is like that once Hera and Zeus were playing, and then they were playing chess, and then they called uh, Tiresias, and Zeus asked just playingly that who is more passionate among male and female. He looked upon Hera and Zeus, and then he said that women are more passionate. That angered Hera much, and she cursed Tiresias with the blindness. But Zeus, who was very happy with his comment, with his comment, and then he bestowed uh, Tiresias with two boons. The first was the prophecy, that he could profess the future, and then there was another thing, that was immortality. So from there, from the land of Oedipus, Tiresias becomes the link, and he is also a cameraman of Iliad's poem. Cameraman, as I have told you, Tiresias is the link of all the five sections. The poem used the Montag technique. Montag technique, it is under the influence of Ezra Pound. Azrapan was imaginist, and he believed that it is better that in place of writing so much thing, or in place of giving so much explanation, it is better to give an imaginative picture and to combine these picture to give a bigger meaning. Similarly, many pictures have been combined in the poem. When you read the line, you can imagine what is going on there to come to a common ground from where the poem actually began and ended into. So this technique is known as Montague technique, that is using the pictures. Tiresias is also called as cameraman. As I told you, T.S. Eliot used Tiresias in place of him. It is Tiresias who is speaking and seeing, which is the gist of the whole poem. The poem is what Tiresias sees from his eyes and what he said. The same technique has been used in Mahabharata in the section of Kurukshetra, where Sanjay narrates the actions of Kurukshetra to Dhritarashtra. For Dhritarashtra, Sanjay is the cameraman for him, and he narrates whatever happening on the Kurukshetra to Dhritarashtra. So that particular section is what Sanjay sees from his eyes and what he says. So there is a link. You can find the Tiresias and that of the Sanjay. If you people are watching Mahabharata and following the serial, you will then come to this point where Sanjay will be the cameraman for Dhritarashtra. You will just realize how Tiresias narrated the whole poem all about. Thank you. We will continue with the poem in our next video. Good day.